Hello, this is the year 2021 and our aim in this year is of course to innovate and come out of the pandemic that devastated the economy as well as our whole life per se across the world. So, but the question is how do we define innovation? And that's the purpose of this particular presentation, this particular video, and I thought it will be useful as well as also to explain what innovation is, especially in this year, which is a recovery year from what has been a change that we have not seen before. Holistic change, if you may, and that's exactly what we need to work towards. So our aim in this video is to focus only on the definition of innovation and also how much of that innovation definition should be changed or has changed. So we of course will explain as well as define innovation and also give you some flavor of what are those constituents of that definition, sort of unbundle the innovation definition. Okay, starting point is definition. Is it essential? Do we really need to define innovation? Is this really the key to doing what we should be doing or what we are already doing? Is it really necessary to define? So we believe to define a phenomena or a concept, it is essential to define something that we should be doing. Definition gives us some sort of a clarity in terms of the boundaries as well as recognition, perceptions, as well as recognition of that phenomena when we see it in the complexity of various amalgamations of various processes, various thoughts, because world is not really cast in very specific stones, if you may. It is a flowing river, so to say. So how do we find out what do we mean by innovation and how do we really define it? So definition, in fact, is the essential component. And it is also important to know that the number of people across the world, across the domains, across the fields, across various areas have defined innovation in multiple words, phrases, and mostly and most of the times those definitions may be correct, but they may not be complete and also may not necessarily be as unambiguous as we would like to be. So we need a definition which is comprehensive, as far as possible complete, and as much as we want, it should be unambiguous, right? So there are three essential facets of any definition that we should be working on: complete, comprehensive, and unambiguous. So we will define innovation. Of course, it may have all those elements that some other people have defined in multiple fields, as I said earlier, but we will unbundle the definition and also give very specific pointers to the constituents of the definition, also some sort of steps that should be in some order they should arrive, and that order becomes the process in the subsequent applications that we are going to explore later. So our aim here, as I said earlier, is to define and of course unbundle the innovation definition. Okay. Okay. Before we before we define it, we should also understand what it cannot be. What is not innovation is more important also to define, describe, and also distinguish it from various efforts and work activities that humanity is engaged in. So, people have told us, since I am successful, therefore, whatever I am doing should be called innovation, or whatever is the new fad or the new word that is going the rounds. This is the typical uh, management type of focus as well as articulation. Second type of thing is second type of articulation is that since I work or my company has been in existence for many decades, we have survived and thrived in the world that exists or even is going to exist. So please do not preach us what is innovation. Okay, so this is the second type of uh, viewpoints that people have when we ask about the definition of innovation. Typically, we suggest that since we have taken a call that we need to define, so therefore we need to put in the effort to distinguish and also clarify exactly when we will say innovation has happened or is going to happen, or how do we do innovation also. What do we mean by innovation? Long back, people told us that we are doing it for donkey years. Just tell me few jargons so that I can package my work rather than trying to understand what innovation means. Of course, that is the view is to get more brownie points in front of management and the market and say that this is what is innovation. So, which is also fine. All these 3 points are fine, but they are not really what we are aiming at. So our aim is really to get to the components or the engineering aspect of, or even the structural as well as a dynamic part of something called innovation, and that is our fundamental focus in this presentation. So our aim is to clearly define so that subsequent presentations that we are going to use and make use of should not be as confusing as typically the word innovation is. Okay. Okay. So in our experience, the only or maybe the best definition that we have seen has come not from anyone else, but from a very different source. Mahatma Gandhi or Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, it is attributed, this particular quote is attributed to him. You be the change that you want to see in the world. And we believe this is an excellent definition and covers various aspects of what we mean by innovation. So there is an element of the doer should be you, or the person who should be participating in the creation of the change, right? You be the change that you want to see in the world. So this is our, I think, the starting point, and it's an excellent starting point. And of course, we now need to unbundle it also, and also sort of explore, expand this. So when we started our company in 2008, also before that, when we worked in various organizations, our definition was we reached this particular definition after a lot of experiences, and also a lot of experiments, and also various projects that we did with various companies across domains as well as fields, and various type of contexts. If you So our old definition was successful exploitation of ideas. These ideas can be old or new. To change the way one understands, generate options, choose options, implement options to generate desired effects. I will first bundle this, but one thing is that when we talk about innovation, we talk about change. And in a very interesting novel as well as a movie, old movie called The Leopard, it says that if we want everything to stay as it is, everything will have to change. Just to keep with the world that is changing, we need to change continuously, and not we. Everything that we are part of, or everything that is part of us, need to change. Okay. So change seems to be the fundamental aspect of what we call innovation. But change can happen through various means, right? So everything is changing anyway. So, however, there is a specific type of change that requires some input from the mind. That is why we said it has to be a successful exploitation of ideas. So there seems to be a need, or as an input for change, that should come from ideas, from the mind, of course, and then only we will be able to call it innovation as per our definition, right? So our old definition of innovation, which is valid to a great extent even now, uh, is successful exploitation of ideas, new or old ideas, to change the ways. We need to change the way one understands the context in which he or she is, generate options, choose options, and implement those options for generating the desired effects. So from where will we get the desired effects? Once we understand that this is the way things are. Therefore, if we want something to be achieved, we need to change something, right? So to generate those desired effects, right, we need to make certain changes to our understanding, our options to generate, options to our methods to generate options, or the way we generate options, or the type of options we generate also. Then we need to choose the specific set of options or subset of options that we have generated, or become visible as we grow deeper into our understanding. And as we choose, we have to start implementing those options also. So it's a sort of a mix, some sort of a iterative process that goes in this understanding, generation, choice, as well as implementation of options to generate certain desired effects that we need to. Of course, many times we'll fail, right? So innovation is not necessarily about success alone, but finding the paths to achieve those desired effects, generate those desired effects through successful exploitation of ideas. So successful part comes little later. We make it successful rather than we define the success upfront and choose based on that definition. Choose the options, based on that definition. It is the other way around actually. So we'll come to that part of our evolution of this definition later. So for the time being, let us look at this definition and keep it as, I think, the base from uh, Gandhi's "You be the change that you want to see in the world" definition. So a little bit evolved or little bit unbundled definition, but we need to now move on to, is this sufficient, or is this all, is it comprehensive, complete and unambiguous, or is it something is missing in this? Okay. So even if it is comprehensive, complete and unambiguous, it can further, we can drill it down a little bit further. So 2021, we will define a new definition V of, but one thing is there, the change and innovation are interlinked in a way that is not easily separable, right? I mean, the definition per se is that you need to create change, right? Innovation is about change. Now, in 2021 and further ahead, we call this definition the PIN-PON-TIDLE definition. I will explain what do you mean by PIN-PON-TIDLE, but it is important to remember these small little phrases. PIN-PON-TIDLE definition of innovation. Okay. So we have this definition, and this is really a 2021 definition that we would like, and we believe this is substantially covers the ambiguity level, completeness perspective, as well as sufficiently comprehensive also. So, but it uses three small abbreviations, and which I think need to be unpackaged, so to say. Okay. So, successful creation of pin change. Okay. Pin is preferred, imagined, needed change. Preferred, imagined, and needed change. Okay. For PON fulfillment, what is PON? Problems, opportunities, and needs. Okay. So, what change is needed will come as problems, opportunities, or needs. Okay. Fulfillment of this PON through TIDDLE. TIDDLE is, we need to have some thinking, ideas, design, learning, and evolution. So, TIDDLE is thinking, ideas, or maybe thoughts, ideas, designs, learnings, and evolution. So, this is our definition, the PIN-PON-TIDDLE definition of innovation. PIN-PON-TIDDLE innovation, and we'll just little bit explain these changes that we have from the previous definition, so that you get a view of what it is. When we say pin change, so if you just look at, many times we start with what change that is preferred, right? What we prefer, but is it really needed? So we may be preferring something. Is it needed by the system, by the context in which the system exists, or the type of society that we have, or the social context in which that context, that particular system, or that particular entity, or that particular aspect exists? So the preferred and needed is one 2 by 2 matrix, right? You can evaluate whatever changes that you are writing, are they needed, right? Second is, even if you prefer that change that you believe that you want to, have you imagined the change sufficiently? If that change happens, what will be the impact? What exactly will be the change? How do we really see that imagined change? Right? So this is the second part. Preferred and imagined. First was preferred and needed. Right? Preferred and imagined is the second part. So here also once again we need to say yes, that is what I have imagined extensively, and that still I would like to have my preferences for that particular change that I am about to commit to. Okay. Third part is, have you, after you have imagined, is it really needed by the people, by the systems, by the set of subsystems or networks which are going to be impacted by that change? So it is a broader aspect of imagined enough and needed still, right? So preferred, imagined, and needed. So I think these three matrices, these three small tables, if you want to fill up, we will be able to understand clearly what change do we desire, what change do we really want to be, plus how much of that change is needed, and have we sufficiently imagined it and its impact on what it is going to lead to, what changes further it is going to lead to. This is the pin change part, and I think these questions, if you answer or if you at least think through, you will be starting getting about the next point about. So when we said preferred, imagined, needed change, we have clearly defined we have clearly articulated these changes and also analyzed in terms of the pin change. Now comes the implementation part. How do we do that? What exactly we need to do? So to do that, we will be meeting certain needs, right? As well as there may be certain opportunities. So it is basically why that change is needed and why that change that you prefer and also have imagined and you also have saying that it's needed. What exactly is the needs that you are fulfilling? So it may be the basic needs, functional needs, emotional aspirations, or it may be desires of the people, or maybe some sort of a value which typically is a very arbitrary and personal and also has a lot of range of possibilities across domains, those needs, right? So needs are the, what exactly are the needs that your pin change is going to fulfill. Second aspect is it may be an opportunity that I can move up from fulfilling some need and or gaining better or value for business that I have in, or that is what I want to create. It can be created in a very dynamic situation. It can be complex. It can have timeliness to it also. Certain window of opportunity is there. If we create within so much of time, within that period, then it will flow and it will be utilized. Otherwise, that window goes off. It may have strategic, operational, or tactical, or even sub-tactical levels also. Now, once we have got this needs and opportunities clearly looked at from the pin change that we have talked about, now we will have the next step of defining to meet these needs and capture these opportunities. There may be something called problems, hindrances to achieve those, right? Now, further, those problems may be routine, non-routine, inventive, paradoxes, or so nowadays people are talking about a wicked problem also. Wickedness is that to define that problem, it is not only difficult, it is not definable. Only if you have some sort of a path in hand, you use that path to define that problem. So that becomes a very contextual and the option driven problem definition rather than the problem driven solutioning type of thing. So if you have some sort of a, so as the saying say goes, if you have the hammer, everything will looks like a nail to you because you have some hammer, right? Every problem will be solved by that hammer, right? So here are these five type of problems that we have looked at: routine problems, non-routine, inventive problems, paradoxes, and wicked problems. In subsequent uh, videos on this channel, we will explore the type of problems also. But for the time being, we have talked about pin change for pawn fulfillment, right? Pin is preferred, imagined, and needed. Pawn is problems, opportunities, and needs. How will you do that? How will you really now solve those problems? Or even before pin pawn, how do we get to these, right? So we need the third component of our definition, which is we need to do tiddle. Tiddle requires us to start with thought, thinking. And in a very old book by John Dewey in 1910, he has written an interesting point about something called reflective thinking. He says active, persistent, and careful consideration of any belief or supposed form of knowledge in the light of the grounds that support it and the further conclusions to which it tends. So this is really what reflective thinking is, and this I think is the key component of our tiddle part. So we need to do pin pawn, but we also continuously need to do reflective thinking about active, persistent, and careful consideration of all beliefs and supposed form of knowledge in the light of the grounds that support it. And the lights of the grounds are the evidences that we are going to gather. And once we have done this consideration, the further conclusions or inferences to which these ground realities as well as our belief or supported form of knowledge in a joint manner points to is what we should be concluding, right? So this is what thinking is. In this process of thinking, we will come up with, if this happens like this, why can't we think about this, right? That is where the germination of change starts, and those are called those thoughts that germinate change when you are doing reflective thinking about the system that you are part of or you are engaged with or the context you are in or the changes that you are observing will give you some thoughts which will germinate the elements of change. If or what if, uh, why can't we, right? Why? What if, right? If that can be so, these are the phrases which will lead to ideas. Ideas are those thoughts that germinate change. So once you have these thinking and ideas for the pawn changes that you want to look at, right? The, the pin changes. For the pin changes, you have the pawns. Now you actually are reached to ideas through reflective thinking or thinking about what you have ground evidence versus the knowledge belief that already is existing. So some sort of a connect between these two. Once you have the ideas, we need to give shape and form to the imagination, ideas and concepts to manifest the preferred and needed change that we talked about, right? And this is where I think elements of how do we construct that change, how do we configure or how do we create that change comes. The how part comes into picture in design. The how part of making that ideas happen in real life, and that is where the the technical part of doing innovation starts, right? How, when you start creating those changes or the change that you have are preferred or needed, right? In this process, you will discover new knowledge when you are starting designing or update of existing knowledge, potentially resulting in new understanding. And once you have designed and also to some extent implemented some aspects, you will get new evidence. So there the discovery of new knowledge and updation or changes in the existing knowledge leading to deeper and better understanding or even new understanding will need to be an active process of doing design. Okay. Once it is implemented and sort of applied and given to the people or the users of your solution, you will also see that that is not really the end of it. The dynamics of the change that you have created will actually be in a flowing river, as I said earlier. It will not be in a static pond, right? So the evolution of you or your solution or the change that you have proposed or created, sorry, created, that need to be enhanced. Enhancement of a system through structural or behavioral changes to survive and perform better in the changing or changed environment is what is called evolution. So TIDDLE includes thinking, ideas, design, learning, and evolution. So this is our pinpoint definition, pinpointed definition of innovation. Now, little bit on when we said innovation attempts likely to fail because, okay, innovation, when we said innovation is successful creation of change through ideas, from there we also need to see the sequence in which these processes or these steps should be followed, the pinpoint TIDDLE definition that we have described. So fundamentally, we should not be looking at success. So innovation attempts or creation of change attempts are likely to fail if the sequence of questioning and exploration is what is succeeding now? Can we change something in what we do? Can we get some out of box ideas? Let us implement design thinking, agile, lean, or new flavor of the times, whatever. This is a random trial and error type of a process. Sometime it may succeed, but if you start with success criteria, you actually restrict your thinking as well as a potential for change that may likely to be much more or much different than what you're attempting to. Here is another path, the second path, which says that first look at what exactly is changing. The second path says, and which we believe is going to will help you to succeed in the innovation attempt that you're going to do. What is changing is the first question. Right? Then we of course talk about what change is needed, preferred or imagined, the pin change. First question is what is changing? What exactly is changing? And then when you have written the pin change or you have highlighted the pin change that you need, Then you need to ideas to create or manifest the needed change. And the fourth part comes about now those since you have taken a call of creating the change, right? The pin change that we talked about. You may get definitely will get some problems, and most likely those problems will be may not be routine or non-routine, or some of them may be, but mostly they will be inventive paradoxes, inventive problems or paradoxes, or even wicked problems also. Now, in those problems, we need to solve those problems and make the ideas and their manifestations successful in creating the needed change while adapting them to the changes that are happening across the context in which the system is or the change effort is. For this, you need to have some sort of a system of innovation. How will you do this? So, some collective mechanism and view, also certain guidelines will be needed. So, that maybe subsequently we'll describe in some other talk. But here our aim is to define, as we said. So, I think PIN-PON-TIDLE definition is our uh, unbundled definition of innovation. Unbundling innovation or unpackaging innovation is essential, as we say. However, as we know, innovation is a huge risk. So, success anxiety, thinking biases, success inertia, all these things will not let you think and generate ideas because of the past that already is. In a study in 1997, about 24 years back, published in a journal, people found that one successful product required about 3,000 raw ideas to be submitted. So, in this decade that we're talking about, we will need many more ideas and what is called the non-obvious ideas. But to do that, we need to take care of success anxiety, thinking biases, and success inertia. And that requires us to get to two very specific aspects of innovation. We need to generate strong ideas, substantially strong ideas, rather than simple small increments that we are talking typically are sucked into when we are doing work, right? Then we need to make strong choices, deciding, right? First one is inventing, second is decision making, and that has to be at all levels of the enterprise. So innovation is a huge risk, but if we can crack inventing and decision making, generating strong ideas and making strong choices at multiple levels in your organization, you potentially have a recipe. So in our view that we talked about, how or innovation how, right? How do we create the change? So there are 3 points about this whole definition. A much more simplified aspect. We need to design the pin change, right? That's what we said, the tiddle part. We need to design the pin change. Pin is preferred, imagined, and needed change. And we need to make it successful. So there are two parts, right? First is design the pin change, and second, make it successful. Right? So there are three clear steps. Find the pin change, preferred, imagined, needed change, design it, and evolve it continuously as it. So there are three phases of innovation or how part also, right? So in fact that is exactly our graffiti innovation framework. The pin change, find, design, evolve. And this is where you can really sort of make Archimedes redundant. We don't need the bathtub because we are continuously through a process, through a system. We will be continuously finding, designing, and evolving the pin change that we want, right? And that is exactly what our definition is, also the framework that we talk about. Okay, thank you for listening, and also I think we can look at this as a starting point. In the next video, we will talk about the system of innovation, the graffiti framework for innovation that we talked about, but we'll use this video as the basic innovation definition, and we have tried to unbundle it comprehensively, completely, if you may, also quite unambiguously in our perspective. Right? So here is what we suggest is our definition and much comprehensive definition for the year 2021. So let us solve the year 2021 because I think there is a need to solve the year. Right? How do we solve this year? Because there are questions that this year is asking, and in fact, the previous decade, especially the last year, has asked us so many questions as we were bundled in our houses. So, can we unbundle innovation and also solve the year 2021 together? So, thank you. And this is our email and number, mobile number. We wish you all the best and wait for the next video. Thank you.